The manual of uniform traffic control devices, I mean, it's the signals portion is, it guides what the displays will be, and starts out by saying when you should have a traffic signal or not, and one of those is that this portion right here is section 4B03, which says it provides for the orderly movement of traffic, and they increase the traffic handling capacity of the intersection. And in transportation, sometimes failure can be a sign of success, right? Activity and interest, and also it can be one where with failure, you may be allowing transit to be a little more competitive or bike traffic. And so, the adequate road capacity, it's guidance in here, but it's one of those elements that they suggest widening the roadway as the solution, when in reality that may just be exacerbating the problem. I was always wondering why I was waiting so long from the train to the bus connection to get home. And so transportation kind of piqued my interest early on in high school. The manual defines the shall and shoulds, and so there are legal requirements associated with the manual that really are set by national policies. So within this, there are key elements that cities must adhere to, or shall adhere to is the kind of the operative word. If you shall do something, you must do it. If it should, then there's some engineering judgment. Well, anytime there's a crash or that happens, there's the potential for liability of a city, and so was the design appropriate for the situation? And I think partly it's what is reasonable, and reasonable is in the eye of the beholder in some cases. So if the engineers, if you think about the mode split, how many people drove to work this morning, it's a pretty high percentage. And so if you start there, and they're as a driver, and they're talking to their wife that's a driver of an automobile, they're going to be thinking of the needs of people in cars. But if you start from a spot where you biked in them this morning, you're going to be thinking about, there may be a different element of safety, because you're thinking about how vulnerable you are when you're on your bicycle. So that's, the engineer, who's doing the analysis is really very important. How we've designed for pedestrians, we make people hit the push button as opposed to just detecting automatically. That's a value choice. In some cases, like in downtown Portland, we don't do that. We don't require you to hit the button. We just bring up the walk indication for you. And essentially, if you look at the signalized intersections of the high capacity manual, it treats pedestrians somewhat as an impediment. Pedestrians reduce saturation flow, which then reduces the capacity of the intersection, which then results in failing level of service, which is not what you want as a traditional transportation engineering measure. So there's those aspects that, again, if you read the manual, it's ingrained in us as engineers that pedestrians may be an impediment as opposed to an important user that we should prioritize.
How do you feel bicycles play into that equation?
Well, in a lot of cases, bicycles aren't even considered. It's focusing on bicycles as vehicles, but then it also suggests that you can use them, you can treat them like pedestrians. So there's a little bit of the discretion of how you use the manual and how you characterize bicycle traffic as part of the transportation system. In downtown Portland, we set the progression speeds very low because we want to create a good pedestrian environment. We want to keep traffic moving, and we want, even now with the increase in bike traffic, we want bikes to be able to keep up with the traffic without having to stripe a lane. That's a really nice thing, to be able to feel on a bike that you belong in traffic and that you can take your lane, and you can even bike side by side with someone. The policies of the city are that to create a good community and have sidewalk cafes and think about the various community development aspects of it, then you should start there and figure out how you might reduce the speeds. In downtown Baltimore, they have written articles about how proud they are that they progress traffic at 30 and 35 miles an hour through downtown. And on our arterial streets in downtown Portland, we're progressing cars at 15 to 16 miles an hour. And in some cases, we're putting pedestrian safety and encouragement of pedestrians over other modes because of the vulnerability of those populations. It's not like a European context where everybody is a pedestrian and a cyclist for a good amount of their time, you go back to that mode split. How often are you a cyclist? How often are you a pedestrian? And that's how you drive is a function of that, right? If you're walking most of your time, then when you get in the car, you're going to be more respectful, I think. As a Department of Transportation, the easiest mode to serve is a pedestrian. There's no maintenance with a pedestrian. After you get the sidewalks poured, you don't have to repave. Sidewalks in my neighborhood are from 1907, and I think they're going to last for a few more years. I'm not too worried about them.
I'll tell you in street intersections, because they give you a place to go, give meanings to lines on maps, and tell you